Bear down, fam. $70 million and Joey Porter Jr. on the Chicago Bears radar. You heard that right. Ryan Poles has a trade with Pittsburgh sitting on his desk that could armor up the secondary or blow up in his face if the price doesn't come down. In a minute, I'll break down why this is riskier than it looks. Meanwhile, over at Hollis Hall, a war just ended. Braxton Jones locked down the starting left tackle job, and that's about to push Jedrick Wills Jr., an ex-top 10 pick, right off the roster. A guy who showed up with a resume and is walking out with nothing. All that right now, buckle up. Okay, bro, I need you to sit down for this one because I just read Alex K's proposal on Bleacher Report, and I'm still processing it. They published it today, just a couple hours ago. The Chicago Bears would send the Pittsburgh Steelers a 2027 second-round pick plus a 2027 sixth-round pick. And in return, they would bring back cornerback Joey Porter Jr. Just like that, no warning. And the number attached to Porter on the open market is absurd. 3 years, $70 million in projected value according to SpotRack. That is the biggest number in today's entire sweep of news, and that is exactly why we are starting right here. First, context, because you need to understand why this conversation even exists in the first place. The Bears secondary is in an uncomfortable spot right now, days before the season opener. Tyreek Stevenson, the starting corner, is listed week to week with an injury that still does not have a clear return timeline. Kyler Gordon, the other starting corner, is dealing with a soft tissue issue, the kind that will not end a season, but absolutely eats into your reps right when you need them most in training camp. And when both of your starting corners have question marks hanging over them at the same time, in a year where Chicago is coming off being the number 2 seed in the NFC, that is exactly when the front office starts making calls. Now let's talk about who Joey Porter Jr. actually is, because not everyone watching this follows the Steelers closely. Porter is the son of Joey Porter, the legend, the linebacker we all loved to hate back in the day. Pittsburgh drafted him in the second round of the 2023 draft, pick 32, out of Penn State. He is a physical press corner, the kind who gets right up in your face at the line of scrimmage and does not let you breathe through the first 10 yards. That style of man coverage, aggressive, physical, is literally what every modern defensive coordinator dreams of having on his roster. The problem, and this is where my excitement cools off a little, is that last season was not his best year. According to PFF, he finished ranked 36 among qualified cornerbacks in the league. 36. That is not an elite corner falling out of the sky. That is a player with undeniable physical upside whose production last year was frankly mediocre. And this is where I, as a fan, analyzing this with a cold head, and not just with the navy and orange heart, have to be honest with you. Giving up a second-round pick for a corner who ranked 36 in the league last season raises a ton of red flags for me. Bro, what I just read almost made me spill my coffee. A second-round pick is not nothing. That is the kind of pick that in a deep draft can hand you a day one starter, a player on a cheap rookie contract for 4 years. Trading that away for a corner with an expensive contract coming in questionable production last season is betting hard that the potential translates into real production inside a brand new scheme. And that is where I want to get into the tactical piece, because this is what I actually care about breaking down. Chicago brought in Dennis Allen as defensive coordinator when Ben Johnson arrived, and Allen's system leans heavily on aggressive man coverage combined with pre-snap disguises. Those leverage changes right before the snap that confuse the opposing quarterback about whether it is blitz or coverage coming. For that scheme to work, you need corners who can play press man without constant safety help over the top. Porter, on paper, fits that perfectly. He has the size, he has the aggression, he has the family DNA of playing physical. But fitting on paper and fitting on the field, in the first weeks of installing a new scheme in the middle of a division title race, are two completely different things. Corners, who arrive mid-season or even in late August like this would be, almost never come in synced up with disguise coverages from day one. They need reps, they need trust built with the rest of the secondary. They need to understand when Allen wants them pressed up and when he wants them giving cushion. That does not get learned in 2 weeks of practice. Now, to be fair to the other side of this argument, because this channel does not do one-sided analysis, Ryan Poles' asset management context matters too. Chicago already has $40 million committed to safety Kobe Bryant's deal, plus another $40 million in Kyler Gordon's own extension, and pause right there. Yes, Gordon shows up twice in this equation, both as the injured corner today and as one of the big money pieces on this roster, and that also factors into the total financial math of the secondary. Head coach Ben Johnson carries a $65 million 5-year contract. Chicago's roster is bloated at several key positions, and that makes every additional asset that comes in have to justify its opportunity cost brutally. If Poles genuinely believes this contention window with Caleb Williams, with Ben Johnson, with this roster that reached the number 2 seed in the conference, is the real window, then spending a 2027 second-round pick, a pick that is still a year and a half away from even being played, to fix an immediate secondary depth problem has a now or never logic that cannot be completely dismissed. But my stance stays the same, and I'm going to say it clearly. I would not make this trade as it is currently structured. Not for a full second-round pick. If Pittsburgh drops the price to a third-rounder, or if they attach a performance condition that reduces the risk, for example, the sixth-rounder only upgrades to a fifth if Porter hits a certain snap count, then I start listening. But giving away a full second-round pick for a corner who ranked in the bottom third of the league last season, in the middle of panic over two injuries that are probably short-term, smells like a reactive decision to me, not a strategic one. And Poles, throughout his career as a general manager so far, has not been someone who reacts out of panic. That is why, honestly, and this is purely my read on this front office's behavior pattern, I suspect that if this trade does get done, it closes at a lower price than what Kay is proposing today. Pittsburgh can ask for a second-round pick on the first phone call. That does not mean that is where the negotiation ends. What I can guarantee you is this. If Stevenson or Gordon end up on a longer-term injury list, not just week to week, this conversation stops being hypothetical and becomes urgent. And that, fam, is when the math completely changes, because a roster with Super Bowl aspirations cannot afford to play practice squad level corners for a long stretch of the season. So keep this name in your back pocket, Joey Porter Jr. It might not happen this week, but if the Stevenson and Gordon injuries drag on, bet on that phone line between Chicago and Pittsburgh, ringing again before the October trade deadline. Okay, bro, hold on, because this one is even wilder. Because after months, and when I say months, I mean it, going all the way back to spring minicamps, of not knowing who the hell was going to protect Caleb Williams' blindside, we finally got an answer today that sounds definitive. Brad Biggs of the Chicago Tribune, one of the most reliable, least sensational reporters covering this team, wrote in plain words that, barring something unexpected, Braxton Jones looks like the starter at left tackle to open the season. And when Biggs says something like that with that level of certainty, it is usually because he has sources inside Hollis Hall confirming it for him. Not because he is speculating from his desk. Let's rewind how we got here, because this left tackle battle had more twists than a full season of Locked On. Braxton Jones is a fifth-round pick from the 2022 draft, out of Southern Utah, a school that not even the most obsessive scouts had on their radar until he showed up. Jones became an improvised starter in 2022 out of necessity, had uneven seasons in 2023 and 2024, and heading into this offseason, the Bears decided not to chase a long-term solution at the position in free agency. Instead, they gave Jones a one-year, $5 million deal and went out and added veteran competition to push him. That decision, at the time, raised a lot of eyebrows. This is wild, I remember thinking when I read it, because betting your franchise quarterback's blindside on a fifth-round pick with a mixed track record sounded like management playing with fire. But here is the real technical breakdown of why Jones won this battle, and it is not an accident. According to Biggs, Jones has been the most consistent player at the position since camp opened. Consistency in the context of a tackle protecting a mobile quarterback like Caleb Williams means one very specific thing: repeatable gap integrity. We are not talking about isolated highlight pancake blocks in preseason. We are talking about a player who, snap after snap, holds his leverage, does not overextend against speed rushers off the edge, and resets his positioning when a rival tries a swim move or a rip. That is exactly what an offensive line coach needs to see sustained over time, not in flashes. And he did it, on top of that, with limited practice time due to a minor knee injury. That says something, too, about how the staff is evaluating him. They did not penalize Jones for the missed practices because what they saw from him when he was actually on the field was solid enough not to create doubt. Now, the part of this story I find juiciest, and this is exactly what Locked On Bears would be dissecting in a full episode, is the Ozzie Trapilo situation. Trapilo, a second-round pick from the 2025 draft out of Boston College, suffered a torn patella tendon in January in a playoff game. That kind of injury typically costs you 8, 9, even 10 months on the competitive calendar. The realistic expectation for Trapilo was that he would not even be close to competing for the starting job in Week 1 this season. But, according to separate reports on the state of the roster, Trapilo is recovering at a speed that surprised the medical staff itself, and some are even speculating he could be ready to start sooner than anyone imagined back in January. And here is the real tension, the part that genuinely has me intrigued. We have two reports on the same day, August 25th, telling us slightly different stories. One says Jones already won the battle, full stop, done. The other suggests Trapilo, with his accelerated recovery, could still work his way into the conversation weeks after the season kicks off. My personal read on this, and I will give it to you completely honestly, I do not think these are contradicting stories. I think they are describing two different moments of the same season. Jones opens as the starter in Week 1, That much is basically locked in according to the most reliable source we have today. But if Trapilo, who was a second-round pick for a reason, keeps progressing at this rate, it would not surprise me at all if by November or December, Ben Johnson has a legitimate decision to make about whether to kick Trapilo inside, keep him as a premium swing tackle, or even reopen the competition if Jones hits a rough patch. And honestly, this is the kind of problem any team in the NFL would sign up for with their eyes closed. Having two tackles with real starting caliber competing for the same job is not a weakness. It is a season-long insurance policy. Because, let's be honest, fam, the recent history of the Bears protecting their quarterback has not been pretty. Every season Caleb Williams goes through without constant pressure in his face is a season where his development into an elite quarterback gets a real chance to actually complete itself. And with Jones locked in as option number one and Trapilo waiting on the bench as premium insurance, this is, without exaggeration, the strongest blindside protection group this franchise has had in several years. My final take on this: give Jones the credit he earned. He was not the sexiest pick in the draft. He did not arrive with top 10 hype. But he stood in there when nobody else could, got better year over year, and now, with real competition pushing him, he came out on top. That says as much about his character as it does about his technique. And to close out today's sweep, a departure that, if it gets confirmed in the next few days, is the direct and logical consequence of everything we just talked about in the last story. Jedrick Wills Jr., the tackle Cleveland selected with the 10th overall pick in the 2020 draft, one of the top-ranked tackles of his class at the time, is projected to be cut from the 53-man roster before August is over. Wills came to Chicago this offseason as a free agent with a resume of years of NFL starting experience, and the logic of the signing made sense at the time. If Ozzie Trapilo was not going to be ready, you needed a veteran tackle with real regular season experience as a reliable plan B. But, according to ESPN analyst Courtney Cronin, Trapilo's fast-track recovery changed the entire math. Her words were direct: Trapilo will account for a roster spot, and the Bears get their left tackle back. When that happens sooner than expected, suddenly the roster has neither the room nor the need for an expensive veteran backup tackle, especially when Wills himself did not lock down the backup role with his preseason play. And he is not alone on this list. Kieran Amagaji, a third-round pick from the 2024 draft out of Yale, is also projected to be released. This one stings a little more from an asset value perspective, because Amagaji is still young, still has draft capital invested in him, and in theory still has room to develop. But the reality of roster building in the NFL is cold. The Bears signed a limited number of linemen this offseason, and with Trapilo back sooner than expected, there simply are not enough spots left to keep multiple depth tackles who did not earn their place in camp. So who does stick around then? Braxton Jones, obviously, as we already established. And behind him, Theo Benedette, an undrafted free agent who, according to analyst Jacob Infante, outperformed the other backup tackles. That is a nice story in itself, a player with zero draft capital earning his spot through pure, consistent work in camp, while a former top 10 pick from a powerhouse program ends up on the outside, looking in. My quick take on this, because I do not want to drag out something that at its core is a fairly straightforward roster decision. It makes sense from a cap and immediate need standpoint, but it also exposes something I have been flagging for a while about this front office. The reliance on the health of one young player recovering from a patella injury is a real risk. If Trapilo has a setback, or if his knee does not respond the same way under the load of 16 or 17 regular season games, Chicago loses the veteran depth it had before this cut. It is a calculated bet, not a free one, and I genuinely hope it works out, because if it does not, this is going to be the first name people bring up in October. And that is everything I have got for you today, fam. Heavy day, like every cut-down week. $70 million on the table for a corner who still has to prove he can be what his last name promised in this league. A fifth-round left tackle who earned, through pure work, the respect of all of Halas Hall. And a former top 10 pick who learned the hard way that in the NFL, the name on your resume means nothing if you do not back it up on every preseason snap. Look, if there is one thing that is clear to me after breaking down these three stories together, it is that Ryan Poles is running this roster with a contention window mindset, not a rebuild mindset. You can see it in the willingness to even consider spending a second-round pick in August. The coaching staff trusts consistency over name recognition when it decides starters. It does not hesitate to cut a resume loose if the on-field performance does not back it up. That, to me, is the clearest signal of a front office that knows exactly where this franchise stands right now. This week finishes shaping the roster that is going to chase something big, and personally, I'm left with more questions than answers about Joey Porter Jr., but with total confidence in what Braxton Jones built with his own two hands. Bear down, always. If this video gave you something, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me down in the comments. Would you make the trade for Porter Jr. at the price they're asking, or would you wait for it to drop? I want to read every single answer. See you in the next one.